The room was discovered during renovations when the contractor's sledgehammer broke through what should have been the exterior wall of the Anderson house and found instead another wall, and then another, and finally, a space that existed impossibly between the second floor and the attic. A room that wasn't on any blueprint or deed, that had no door or windows, that could only be accessed by tearing through plaster and studs and insulation. And when they finally broke through, the air that rushed out smelled like lavender and forgetting, like something precious sealed away where it couldn't hurt anyone, but couldn't heal anything either. Claire Anderson stood in the hallway of her childhood home, staring at the hole in the wall and the darkness beyond, and she felt something shift in her chest. Not memory exactly, because there was nothing to remember, but the absence of memory, the shape of something that should have been there but wasn't, like feeling with your tongue the empty socket where a tooth used to be, and she knew without knowing how she knew that this room, this impossible room that shouldn't exist, held the answer to why she'd always felt incomplete, why her family had always seemed to be grieving something they refused to name, why the house on Maple Street had always felt like it was holding its breath. Claire was 42 years old, recently divorced, recently unemployed, recently returned to the small Oregon town of Millbrook, where she'd grown up but never quite belonged. Her mother had died 6 months ago. Cancer, quick and brutal, and left Claire the house with instructions to fix it up and sell it, but also a handwritten note that said, "Don't go into the extra room," even though there was no extra room. Hadn't been in the 30 years Claire had lived there before leaving for college and never really coming back. The contractor, a man named Dale who'd known her father, stood beside her looking at the hole they'd created. "I've been working on houses in this town for 40 years. Never seen anything like this. It's like someone deliberately built a room and then walled it off, sealed it completely." "When?" Claire asked. "When was it sealed?" Dale examined the construction. Based on the materials, the techniques, I'd say early 90s, maybe 92, 93, 1992. Claire would have been 12. She tried to remember that year, tried to pull up memories of construction, of changes to the house, but found only fog. She remembered being 12 in general, middle school, braces, her first real crush, but nothing specific about the house, nothing about her parents doing renovation work. "Should I keep going?" Dale asked. "Open it up completely?" Claire looked at the darkness beyond the hole. Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to have him seal it back up, to sell the house without ever knowing what was in there. But she nodded. "Open it." It took another hour to make the opening large enough to enter. Claire stood back while Dale worked, and she noticed things she hadn't paid attention to before. The hallway was wrong, too short. The second floor had always felt small, cramped, but she'd assumed that was just the style of old houses. Now she understood. It was small because a significant portion of the space had been walled off, hidden, removed from the floor plan. Finally, Dale stepped back. "It's open. You want me to go in first?" "No, I'll go." Claire pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped through the opening. The room was approximately 12 by 15 feet, completely empty except for dust and what looked like flower petals scattered across the floor. Dried lavender, she realized, which explained the smell. The walls were painted a soft blue. There were no windows, but there were marks where windows had been, rectangular patches where the paint was slightly different, where the wall had been altered, sealed from the inside. In the center of the floor, someone had painted a white circle, and inside that circle, written in careful script, "Forget." Claire's hand shook as she photographed everything. Along one wall were shelves, empty now except for dust. Along another wall, hooks, as if for hanging coats or bags. Everything was clean, orderly, deliberately arranged. This wasn't a storage space. This was a room designed for a purpose. "Anything interesting?" Dale called from the hallway. "I don't know yet. Give me a minute." Claire circled the room slowly, her flashlight catching details. Scratch marks on the floor, as if furniture had been moved. A small stain in one corner that might have been water damage or might have been something else. And on the back of the door that was no longer there, because they'd had to demolish it to get in, nail holes arranged in a pattern. Something had been hung there. A sign maybe. Instructions. She knelt beside the white circle and the word "forget." The paint was old, faded, but still legible. Around the circle were other marks, smudged and barely visible. She leaned closer, trying to make them out. Numbers. Dates, she realized. June 15th, 1992. June 22nd, 1992. June 29th, 1992. July 6th, 1992. They continued, weekly through the summer and fall of 1992, then became less frequent in 1993, then stopped altogether in May of 1994. Claire photographed everything, then backed out of the room. Dale was waiting in the hallway, looking uncomfortable. "I'm done for today," he said. "I'll come back tomorrow to finish the wall repair, unless you want me to." "Leave it open," Claire said. I need to understand what this is before we seal it back up." After Dale left, Claire sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea she didn't drink and tried to remember. Summer of 1992. She would have been 12, almost 13. What had happened that summer? What had made her parents, because it must have been her parents, seal off an entire room of their house? She called her older brother Michael, who lived in Seattle. "Claire, hey, how's the house stuff going? Did you know there was a sealed room on the second floor?" Silence. Then, "What?" "A room, walled off, hidden. The contractor found it today. It's been sealed since the early 90s. Do you remember anything about that?" No. I don't remember any construction, but I was away at college by then. Maybe they did it while I was gone." "Michael, there are dates written on the floor. June through May, 1992 to 1994. Do those dates mean anything to you?" Another long silence. "No. Should they?" "I don't know, but something happened in the summer of 92. Something big enough that Mom and Dad built a room to..." She stopped, the words on the floor echoing in her mind. "To forget? What are you talking about?" "That's what it says. In the room. Forget. Like that was its purpose." "Claire, that doesn't make sense. People don't build rooms to forget things." But Claire thought maybe they did. Maybe that was exactly what people did when the alternative was living with something unbearable. They built a room, put the unbearable thing inside it, and sealed it away where it couldn't hurt them anymore. That night, Claire slept in her childhood bedroom and dreamed of the room. In the dream, it wasn't empty. There were chairs arranged in a circle, and people sitting in them. Her mother, her father, herself as a child, Michael, and someone else. A little girl with blonde hair, younger than Dream Claire, maybe 7 or 8. The girl was crying, and adult Claire, watching this somehow from both inside her child self and outside the scene simultaneously, wanted to go to her, to comfort her, but couldn't move. Her mother stood up and walked to the center of the circle, to the word "forget" painted on the floor. She spoke words Claire couldn't hear, and one by one, the people in the circle closed their eyes. When they opened them again, the little girl was gone. "Where did she go?" Dream Claire asked. "Nowhere," her mother said. "She was never here. We're just remembering wrong. But I can see her chair. I can see where she was sitting." "You're remembering wrong," her mother repeated, and her voice had an edge of desperation. "We all are. That's why we're here. To fix our memories. To forget what never happened." Claire woke up gasping, her heart racing. She grabbed her phone 3:47 a.m. and scrolled through photos she'd taken of the room. The shelves, the hooks, the circle, the dates, June 15th, 1992. What had happened on June 15th, 1992? She got out of bed and went to her mother's room, to the closet where old photo albums were stored. She'd been meaning to sort through them, to decide what to keep before selling the house. Now she pulled them out with a different purpose. She found the album from 1992 and flipped through it. Family photos from spring, birthday cake for Michael's 19th birthday in April, Easter. Then a gap. No photos from June, July, or August. The album picked up again in September with Michael's departure for his sophomore year of college. That wasn't unusual in itself. Not every family documented every moment. But Claire remembered her mother always being vigilant about photos, about documenting their lives. The gap felt deliberate. She went through other albums, 1990, 1991, full of pictures, holidays, and random Tuesdays alike. 1993, 1994, same. But 1992, from June to September, nothing. Claire made coffee as dawn broke and sat at the kitchen table with the albums spread out around her. She studied the before and after. In the April and May photos, her parents looked happy, normal. In the September photos, they looked older, strained, like something had hollowed them out over the summer. And there was something else. In the photos from before that summer, Claire sometimes appeared with another child. A little girl with blonde hair, younger, always at the edge of the frame. Claire had assumed it was a neighbor kid, a friend she didn't remember. But looking closer now, she saw the way her mother's hand rested on the girl's shoulder in one photo, the way her father was helping the girl onto a bike in another. This wasn't a neighbor. This was family. Claire's hands shook as she counted the figures in a photo from April 1992, Easter Sunday. Her father, her mother, Michael, herself, and the blonde girl. 5 people. 5 members of the Anderson family. But Claire only remembered 4. Had only ever remembered 4. She grabbed her phone and called Michael. It was 6 a.m., early for Seattle, but he answered on the 3rd ring. Claire, is everything okay? Michael, how many siblings do you have? What? 1. You. Why? Look at your photo albums from 1992, April specifically. Tell me how many people you see. I don't have photo albums here. They're all at Mom's place. Why? What's going on? There's a girl, a little blonde girl. She's in all the photos from before June 1992, and then she's gone. But I don't remember her. I don't remember having a sister. Silence on the other end. Then carefully, Claire, we don't have a sister. There was always just the 2 of us. Then who's in the photos? I don't know. Email them to me. Let me see. Claire photographed several images and sent them to Michael. She waited, hearing him moving around his apartment, probably making coffee, pulling up the images on his computer. Okay, I'm looking, he said. Then a long pause. Jesus Christ. You see her? I see someone. But Claire, I don't remember her. How is that possible? If she was family? If she was in our house? How do neither of us remember her? The room, Claire said. The room they built to forget. What if it worked? What if they really did forget and made us forget too? That's insane. You can't make people forget through what? Magic? Architecture? I don't know. But something happened in June 1992. Someone disappeared from our lives and from our memories. And Mom and Dad built a room to seal away whatever they couldn't face. Claire spent the rest of the morning at the town library, searching through old newspapers from 1992. She found it on June 16th, a small article on page 3. Local child missing. Emma Anderson, 7, was reported missing yesterday evening from her home on Maple Street. Police are asking anyone with information to contact the sheriff's office. Emma is described as blonde hair, blue eyes, approximately 48 inches tall. She was last seen playing in her backyard around 4 p.m. Emma, Claire's sister Emma, who she didn't remember, who no one remembered except the newspaper and the photographs and whatever truth was sealed in that room. Claire photographed the article with shaking hands and kept searching. June 17th, search continues for missing girl. June 20th, volunteers join search for Emma Anderson. June 30th, search scaled back as hope dims. Then nothing, no follow-up articles, no resolution. Emma Anderson had simply disappeared from the news the same way she disappeared from the family's memory. Claire drove to the police station. The sheriff, a woman in her 50s named Diane Lopez, listened to Claire's question and then pulled up old files on her computer. Emma Anderson, I remember this case. I was a deputy then. It was... She trailed off, reading. We searched for weeks, never found anything. No body, no evidence of abduction, just gone. Like she'd never existed. What happened to the case? It's still technically open, unsolved. But after a few years, when no new leads came in, Sheriff Lopez looked at Claire. You're the sister? I didn't know the family had other children. I'm the sister who forgot she had a sister, until I found a sealed room in our house today. Sheriff Lopez's expression changed. What kind of room? Claire explained everything. The renovation, the discovery, the dates, the word painted on the floor. Forget. I need to see this, Sheriff Lopez said. They drove to the house together. Dale had left the opening in the wall uncovered, and Sheriff Lopez stepped through it with the practiced caution of someone who'd spent a career walking into unknown spaces. She examined everything, took her own photos, circled the room the way Claire had. When she came back out, her face was pale. I need to call in a team. This might be a crime scene. You think Emma was in there? I don't know what to think, but a sealed room discovered in the house of a missing child? I have to investigate. The forensics team arrived that afternoon. Claire waited downstairs while they processed the room, taking samples, photographing everything, searching for evidence of... what? Death? Claire couldn't bring herself to think the word. But when they finished, the lead investigator, a tired-looking man named Ford, had surprising news. No evidence of remains, no blood, no signs of violence. If someone died in that room, they did it somewhere else. This space was cleaned thoroughly. The only DNA we're finding is old, degraded. We'll need to run it. But I'd guess it belongs to people who use the room regularly, not someone who was harmed there. Used it for what? That's what I'd like to know. Sheriff Lopez found something else, a loose floorboard near the shelves. Underneath it was a metal box, small and rusted. Inside were papers, water damaged and barely legible, but enough could be read to tell a story. Instructions, written in her mother's handwriting. The room must be entered at the same time each week. Everyone must be present. The lavender must be fresh. We must all face the center. We must speak her name and then unspeak it. We must remember together and then forget together. We must do this until we don't remember why we're doing it. We must do this until it's real. And a final note, undated. It's working. Emma's name feels foreign now, like something from a dream. Soon we won't have to come here anymore. Soon she'll be completely gone. Soon it will be like she never existed, and we can stop hurting. Claire read the note 3 times, her eyes blurring with tears. Her mother had built a room to forget, had brought the family here weekly, had performed some kind of ritual or therapy or magic, whatever they'd believed would work, to erase Emma from their minds. And it had worked. Why would they do this? Claire asked, though no one had an answer. Why forget her instead of grieving her? Why erase her completely? Sheriff Lopez looked at the papers. Guilt, maybe. If they thought they were responsible for her disappearance, if they couldn't live with what happened. But what did happen? That was the question that haunted Claire for the next several days as the investigation continued. The forensics team found no evidence of foul play in the room. The DNA samples came back. Her mother, her father, Michael, herself. All family members who'd been in and out of the space, but no Emma. As if she'd been deliberately excluded from the room that was meant to make them forget her. The investigation into Emma's original disappearance was reopened. Old witnesses were re-interviewed. Old evidence was re-examined. And slowly, a picture emerged. Emma Anderson had been in the backyard on June 15th, 1992. Claire had been supposed to be watching her. 12-year-old Claire, responsible but distracted, reading a book while her little sister played. Their parents were inside, preparing dinner. Michael was out with friends. At some point, Claire had looked up and Emma was gone. She'd searched the yard, called her name, started to panic. By the time she told their parents, Emma had been missing for 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. They'd searched everywhere. The police had been called. The neighborhood had been scoured. But Emma was simply gone, as if she'd evaporated. The implication was clear, though no one said it directly. Claire had been responsible, and Claire had failed. A 12-year-old girl had been given too much responsibility, and a 7-year-old had disappeared on her watch. And the family, unable to cope with the loss and the guilt and the unspoken accusation, had decided to forget. Claire sat in the kitchen of the house where all of this had happened, staring at the photos of Emma, trying to force herself to remember. But there was nothing. The room had done its job too well. Emma had been erased so completely that not even seeing her face, not even reading about her disappearance, brought back any memory of her existence. Michael arrived from Seattle 3 days after the discovery. He looked older, haggard, and when he saw the photos spread across the kitchen table, his face crumpled. "I don't remember her," he said, tears in his eyes. "Our baby sister, and I don't remember her at all." What kind of person forgets their own sister? The kind whose parents build a room to make them forget, Claire said. They went to the room together. It felt different now, knowing what it was, what it had been used for. Claire could almost see them, her 12-year-old self, her parents, teenage Michael, sitting in a circle, breathing in lavender, speaking Emma's name, and then trying to unsay it, trying to erase her from their minds, one memory at a time. "Why would Mom and Dad make us do this?" Michael asked. "Why not just deal with it? Grieve like normal people?" "Because it wasn't just grief," Claire said, understanding much suddenly. "It was guilt. They blame themselves, and they blame me. I was watching her. I'd let her disappear, and they couldn't live with that, couldn't look at me without seeing their lost daughter, so they decided to forget all of it, to erase Emma so they could go back to being a normal family. That's insane. Maybe, but it worked. We forgot. We've been a normal family for 30 years because we forgot the member we lost." Michael sank to the floor, sitting in the center of the circle where forget was still painted. "I wish I could remember her. I wish I had something, anything, a memory of her laugh or her favorite toy or the way she smelled. But there's nothing. She's just blank." Claire sat beside him. "We could try." "Try what?" "To remember. We're here, in the room they built to forget. Maybe if we try hard enough, we can undo what they did." "That's not how memory works." "How do you know? We're sitting in a room that made us forget our sister. Maybe being here, knowing the truth, we can reverse it." They sat together in the circle, surrounded by the dried lavender that had been scattered there more than 30 years ago. Claire closed her eyes and tried to remember, not just Emma as she appeared in photos, but as she had been in life. A real child, with personality and presence, and a place in the family. Nothing came, just empty space where memories should have been. "It's not working," Michael said. But Claire kept trying. She thought about the dates on the floor, about weekly meetings from June 1992 to May 1994. 2 years of deliberately forgetting. Could 30 minutes of deliberately remembering undo that? She focused on the photos she'd seen. Emma on Easter, smiling, holding a chocolate bunny. Emma on a bike, their father helping her balance. Emma at the kitchen table coloring. Emma, Emma, Emma. And slowly, something shifted. Not a memory exactly, but the shadow of one. A feeling. Claire remembered, or thought she remembered, or invented in the moment, the sound of a little girl laughing. She remembered, or felt like she should remember, small hands gripping hers, a voice saying, "Claire, watch this." She remembered, or imagined she remembered, being annoyed at having to watch her sister, wanting to read her book, wishing Emma would just play quietly. And with that false or real memory came a wave of guilt so powerful it took her breath away. She'd been annoyed. She'd been distracted. And because of that, Emma was gone. Claire opened her eyes, gasping. Michael was looking at her, concerned. What happened? I remember being annoyed with her. I remember wanting her to go away. And then she did. Michael's face went pale. Claire, you were 12. It wasn't your fault. Then why did Mom and Dad build this room? Why did they make us forget if it wasn't to erase the blame? They sat in silence, and Claire understood now what her parents had done. They'd seen their 12-year-old daughter drowning in guilt, had seen their family fracturing under the weight of loss and accusation, and had decided that forgetting was better than remembering. That it was kinder to erase Emma completely than to live with the pain of her absence. But had it been kind? Claire thought of the 30 years she'd lived without knowing she'd had a sister. 30 years of being an incomplete family, of missing someone without knowing what she was missing. 30 years of her parents carrying a secret so heavy it had eventually killed her mother. Because what else could that note have meant? Don't go into the extra room. A dying woman's final instruction to protect her daughter from the truth. Sheriff Lopez called that evening with news. We found something. In the woods behind your old house, there's a ravine. We searched it in 1992, but didn't find anything. Today, with better equipment, we found remains. Child-sized. We'll need DNA testing to confirm, but given the location and the age of the remains, Emma. They'd found Emma. The DNA came back a week later. It was her, Emma Anderson, who disappeared from her backyard on June 15, 1992, had fallen or wandered into a ravine less than a quarter mile from her house. She died from the fall, probably quickly. Her body had been hidden by vegetation and the ravine's depth, invisible to the search parties that had been looking in all the wrong places. It had been an accident, a terrible, tragic accident. Not Claire's fault for being distracted, not the parents' fault for leaving the children unsupervised. Just bad luck and a dangerous ravine and a little girl who'd wandered too far. They didn't need to forget, Michael said when Claire told him. She wasn't murdered. No one was to blame. They could have grieved and moved on like normal people. But Claire understood why they hadn't. Because sometimes knowing no one is to blame is worse than having someone to blame. Because random tragedy, meaningless loss, is harder to accept than guilt. Because at least guilt gives you something to do. Atone, repent, punish yourself. But accepting that bad things just happen, that children die for no reason, that the universe is indifferent to your suffering, that's unbearable. So they'd built a room to forget, had performed their ritual, had breathed their lavender, had erased Emma from existence because living without her while remembering her was too painful. The house sold 3 months later. Claire and Michael split the money and never spoke about Emma again, not because they'd forgotten, but because remembering hurt too much. The room was demolished as part of the renovation. The new owners painted over where it had been, installed a bathroom, had no idea they were living in a space that had once held a family's desperate attempt to outrun grief. But sometimes Claire would wake at 3:47 a.m. from dreams of a little blonde girl, and she'd try to remember if the dreams were memories or just her mind creating what should have been there. She'd try to recall Emma's voice, her laugh, the weight of her hand in Claire's. But there was nothing solid, just impressions, possibilities, the shapes of memories that might have been real or might have been invented to fill the void. And she'd think about the room, about the word painted in its center, about how her parents had tried to build a space where pain couldn't reach them, how they'd tried to architect forgetfulness, to construct amnesia from lumber and drywall and desperate love. It had worked in its way. They'd forgotten. They'd erased Emma so completely that 30 years had passed without anyone questioning why there were only 4 Andersons when there should have been 5. But what they'd built hadn't been a room to forget. It had been a room to contain forgetting, to keep it from spreading beyond the family, to make sure that even if they couldn't remember Emma, the world still could. The newspapers remembered. The police files remembered. The photographs remembered. And eventually, the room itself remembered, holding its secrets until someone was brave or foolish enough to tear down the walls and let the truth spill out. Claire never went back to Millbrook after the house sold, never drove past the place where the room had been, never tried to remember more than the shadows she'd retrieved that day in the circle with Michael. Some forgetting, she decided, was protective. Some erasure was mercy. But she kept one thing: a photograph from Easter 1992 showing 5 people instead of 4. Emma's smile bright and alive, frozen in a moment before everything went wrong. Claire didn't frame it or display it. She kept it in a drawer, looked at it once a year, whispered, "I'm sorry," to a sister she couldn't remember but would never forget again. Because that was the curse of the room. Once you knew it existed, once you knew what had been taken, you could never unknow it. You could never return to the blessed ignorance of forgetting. You had to carry the weight of the erased, hold space for what should have been, live with the ghost of a ghost. The room they built to forget became, in the end, a room that made forgetting impossible. It preserved what it tried to erase. It kept safe what it tried to destroy. And everyone who learned its secret would carry that burden forever. The knowledge that sometimes love drives us to terrible choices, that sometimes the only way to survive loss is to pretend it never happened, that sometimes the cruelest thing we can do is forget, and the cruelest thing we can do is remember. In a town in Oregon, a bathroom stands where a room used to be, and sometimes the homeowners report hearing whispers they can't quite make out, and sometimes they smell lavender, though they've never planted any. And sometimes on June 15th, though they don't know the significance of the date, they feel watched, remembered, held in the mind of a grief so vast it tried to erase itself from existence and failed. And in that failure became permanent, became eternal, became the thing that would never be forgotten because someone loved too much to let go and not enough to hold on, and chose instead to build a space between remembering and forgetting where a little girl could exist in superposition, both there and not there, both mourned and erased, until someone finally tore down the walls and let her be dead for real instead of disappeared. And that's not closure, but it's something. And sometimes something is all we get when the people we love try to protect us by taking away the very pain that proves we loved at all.